What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a guide and overview video for the Outpost system in Starfield, which overall is a pretty interesting system because on one hand it's completely optional. There's nothing really requiring you to engage with this system, but on the other hand, those who do can reap a variety of benefits that can potentially make your life a lot easier. But overall, I would say there are two primary uses for the Outpost system, either setting up your own personal base on some cool planet you happen to find, and or setting up a base that is actively productive, earning you resources, alongside giving you place to store extra cargo, and things you find, as inventory space can be a bit limited if you don't have the perks to take more advantage of it. And with a bit of skill investment, you can even get them producing large quantities of the things you need, while at the same time putting some of your crew members to work. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk a little bit about some things that will make your life easier in this regard. That is to say, skills and research. Like many things in the game, this particular aspect of it can be enhanced if you pick up the appropriate skills, of which I would say there are about 5 really important ones that I want to talk about. For starters, we have botany. Botany is going to allow us to potentially harvest and cultivate plant life at our outposts, which means planets that happen to grow particularly rare plants can be used to their full effect with just one investment point here, with subsequent points making this much easier and faster. Across from that is zoology. A similar thing, but for animals. This will allow us to domesticate local aliens and harvest resources from them without actually harming them, with further points making this easier and also providing us more resources. But then, probably most importantly, we have outpost engineering. This skill is going to give us the ability to make better and better modules for our outposts, provided of course we research them first. But basically, if you want to build more and better stuff, this is the one you need. So of every skill we're going to talk about, this is definitely the most important one, and at rank 4 you can actually half the costs of building all of this stuff. But then we also have planetary habitation. This is going to increase the number of active outposts you can have, while also allowing you to build outposts on more hazardous planets. Environmental effects are a thing in this game, and being in dangerous environments on dangerous planets can lead to damage, death, or just simply status effects from hanging out too long. On planets like that, you normally cannot build there, but with this skill, you'll be able to. Last but hardly least, our one skill that's important outside of the science tree is one in social called Outpost management. This is going to allow us to conduct more convenience items such as cargo links, robots who will be able to work for us, or we'll just be able to assign more crew to an outpost. Basically, it just allows us to increase the cap that these things normally have. So it's not make or break, but it will make your life a little bit easier if you are doing a large number of outposts. From there, though, let's talk about research. For those who don't know, having a skill in something is rarely enough. A skill typically will just unlock research for you, so if you were to get something like weapon modding, it unlocks the research that you can then do to then unlock the weapon modules. Outposts work much the same way. For every one of those skills I mentioned, we typically unlock some research at a laboratory, which is much like a crafting station, but for research, where we can then spend some of our components and materials researching things that we can then build at our outposts afterwards. This is important because for things like botany or zoology, in order to make use of those things, we have to do the research first. And many times this goes hand in hand with outpost engineering, which lets you get access to the better modules as well. But basically, spend the resources on the research, and then once that's done, you'll be able to unlock these things properly and start building. So let's talk about building an outpost a little bit. Functionally speaking, it's very simple. On most any world where it's possible, all you have to do is bring up your scanner, where you will then be able to place a beacon by hitting whatever you have the outpost key assigned to, though it defaults to R on PC. Building a beacon is free, but it sets the surrounding area as an outpost and counts against your outpost limit. While you have the beacon up, it will also show you the available resources on said planet, which is important, though do keep in mind this will change a little bit based on where the outpost is. And then, once you have that beacon built, you have access to build within its range, which is very similar to Fallout 4 settlement building with a few unique twists, so to speak. Mainly that we don't have to worry about things like happiness or providing providing beds, a lot of that is a little more automatic and easier done here. One of the only things you really need to keep in mind resource-wise is power. In order to fuel or provide power to many of the modules that we can build for our base, we have to build the appropriate power sources for them, that we don't really have to connect them or anything, you just have to have them built. These can include things like solar arrays, wind turbines, so once this gives you the power you need, you can then go on to build other things that will work once you have the power to use them. All of this, of course, is going to cost us resources. You can get resources either by mining them directly or just finding them out and about. However, I will say that probably the most convenient place to get this stuff is right in New Atlantis, the first major city you're going to go to, because right past the starport of that area, you can find a convenient shop known as Jemison Mercantile, and that shop actually sells tons and tons of resources and things that are used in this building, and most of them are very cheap. So if you'd like to get a quick start, that's a pretty good way to do it. From there, let's talk about actually getting things built and set up. So first and foremost, I'm not going to cover too much of the decorative aspect of things here, mostly because I'm not really inclined to interior decorating myself, but you can build a large variety of things with the game giving you access to all sorts of structures that can be customized, buildings that can be swapped out, etc. that can make the place feel a little more like home. The main thing I want to draw attention to here is the variance, if you will. If you notice on screen, if you are highlighted over something that has more than one possible configuration, it will prompt you with a variant menu towards the bottom right there, which will let you cycle between the available options, which is especially important when we get to extracting resources from the area. So the extracting tab of the build menu is based upon what resources are available to be extracted out your outpost. So here we can see a water extractor at work, where it will store water in its inventory until full. These extractors are going to be how we pull resources out of the ground, or the air potentially, before we can make use of them. Once that extractor's inventory is full, it will stop producing. But what you can do here is set up a storage facility and then auto-assign the extractors to put what they produce into the storage. However, these cargo bins that you make can also be used to just dump your inventory into, providing you an extra place to store things, making your outpost that much more useful. However, assuming you want to get particular resources at individual outposts and then transfer them between each other, that's also possible with something called a cargo link. This will effectively allow you to connect to outposts, and with some skill upgrades, you can even connect these in between star systems. But basically, you'll build one cargo link at each one that you want to connect, interact with them, connect them, which will let you share an inventory between them, which will allow for some more efficient resource farming, so to speak. But we're not done yet, because presumably you would like to use all those resources you're extracting, and that can be done via the Fabricator. Fabricators can produce a variety of things, provided you of course have the power and resources required to do so, and Fabricators have a large variety of variants that you can assign them to that will allow them to produce all sorts of things, but also typically the things you could normally produce at an industrial workbench. Now, outside of setting up a very particular sort of resource farm among your outposts, that pretty much covers the basics. But a few more things I want to mention here are that you can craft all of the workbenches that you could find out in the world normally at your outpost, making a sort of one-stop shop for crafting, such as the industrial workbench, the cooking station, the pharmaceutical lab, the weapon workbench, the space workbench, and even the research lab can all be built and assigned to your outpost, so you can do all of your research and crafting right here at home, so to speak. You can also craft a few defenses, such as setting up various turrets. Your outpost won't get really attacked a ton or anything, but it can be useful to have some defenses set up to deal with aggressive animals that might stray nearby, or the occasional raider spaceship or something that gets a little too close to you. But generally speaking, you don't have to deal with your outpost being attacked. But nonetheless, there are a few defenses available. Last but not least, however, we have the miscellaneous tab. You can build a variety of things that simply help you out. And this tab is going to be how we do things like build a landing pad for our ship that has ship services built in, how we can get a mission board or a bounty clearance machine at our outpost, or just build something like a scan booster that will allow us to scan things more easily and at greater range on the planet that we have that outpost on. And while most of those are pretty self-explanatory, just build those things and you'll be good to go, the one I want to spend a little extra time on is the crew station. In order to assign crew to an outpost, you first have to build the appropriate amount of crew stations. These are effectively where that crew member will work. And until you have these built, you cannot assign crew to this outpost. And crew members alongside our robots are how we're going to make things a little bit more efficient, as they are what are going to allow us to increase our production, so to speak. Once you have your crew station built, if you go to the ship section of your player menu and then click the crew button, you can, from that screen, assign them to the appropriate outpost. Now, many of these crew members will come with all sorts of abilities and things that can potentially be useful for you, though this can be a little hit or miss right now. The way this is supposed to work is that if they have an appropriate skill such as zoology or botany, it is supposed to stack with your ability to do those things while they are assigned and at that outpost. I have noticed this can be a little bit inconsistent on when it works and when it does not, but generally that's how you're going to make use of those things. The other part of that is robots. This is pretty straightforward. You build the robots, they provide you a passive benefit just for being in your outpost, typically with an increase to things like production and other little useful things. Now, that's pretty much everything important to know about the outposts, I would say, as everything else is largely either simply cosmetic, such as building your own little almost version of player housing that is a little more tailored to you outside of the normal player housing, of course, and then other things like customizing your outposts to do exactly what you want them to do and produce the things you need them to produce. And now that you understand the basics, hopefully, you should be well on your way to setting these up and customizing them the way you please. But as a bit of a reminder, you don't need to do this at all. This system is almost entirely optional. It's something you can set up if you want to, but there's honestly not much of a reason to engage with it if it's not something that speaks to you. But if you really want to lean into that space exploration and make your mark on a variety of solar systems across the galaxy, then this might be for you. That said, that's pretty much going to do it for this video, so I hope it was informative. I hope it helped you out. If it did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.